The biological approach believes that all behavior is caused by physical processes such as genetics, brain structure or brain chemistry, and hormones. This can be shown by your heart pounding or having sweaty palms. Natural selection might explain why we seem to fear certain potentially dangerous animals like poisonous snakes or spiders, or why fears of heights or closed-in spaces are relatively common. It's probably true that our ancestors had the sense to stay away from cliff edges and hissing serpents, and were more likely to live another day, so they can pass along their genes. So this might explain why those fears can persist, and even people who live in places without poisonous snakes would still fear snakes anyway. Research has shown that, for example, that identical twins are more likely to develop phobias even if they're raised apart. Some researchers have detected 17 different genes that seem to be expressed with various anxiety disorders, so it may be that some people are just naturally more anxious than others through genetics. There are 3 assumptions to the biological approach. Assumption 1, behavior can be explained in terms of different areas of the brain. Many different areas of the brain have been identified which are specialized for certain functions. The most important is the frontal lobe, which is responsible for fine motor movement and thinking. Underneath the lobe, there are various structures such as the hypothalamus, which integrates the ANS, which is important for stress and emotion. Assumption 2. Behavior can be explained in terms of neurotransmitters. Neurons are electrical cells that form the basis of the nervous system. The flexibility of the nervous system is enhanced by having many branches at the end of each neuron, which are called dendrites, so that each neuron connects with many others. One neuron communicates with another neuron at the synapse, where the message is relayed by chemical messages, neurotransmitters. Some common neurotransmitters are dopamine, which is associated with awards and also schizophrenia, serotonin, adrenaline, and GABA. Assumption 3. Behavior can be explained in terms of hormones. Hormones are biochemical substances that are produced in one part of the body, like the adrenal glands, and circulate in the blood, having an effect on the target organs. They are produced in large quantities but disappear very quickly. Their effects are slow in comparison with the nervous system, but very powerful. Examples of hormones include testosterone and estrogen. Some hormones, such as adrenaline, are also neurotransmitters. Early treatments for mental disorders include psychosurgery. Moniz developed a surgical procedure called a prefrontal lobotomy in the 1930s. This involved drilling a hole on each side of the skull and inserting an instrument that resembled an ice pick to destroy the nerve fibers underneath. Moniz later refined his technique by designing an instrument with a retractable wire loop that could cut into the white matter of the brain and sever nerve fibers. It was hoped that cutting into the nerve pathways that carried thoughts from one part of the brain to the other would relieve patients of their distressing thoughts and behaviors. This was used for treatments for mental illnesses like depression or schizophrenia. Strengths of the biological approach include being very scientific because the experiments used are measurable, objective, and can be repeated to test for reliability. Also, the researcher has more control over the variables. Being deterministic is that if we know what predetermines our behavior, we are more likely to be able to treat people with abnormal behavior. For instance, the neurotransmitter dopamine has been linked with the mental disorder of schizophrenia. The biological approach has led to many successful applications. For example, the general adaptation syndrome model led to a large amount of other research that has demonstrated that people recover less quickly from wounds if they are stressed. Such understanding is applied in a hospital setting to reduce anxiety and stress in patients so that they can recover more quickly. Weaknesses of biological approach include the theories being too simplistic because it develops theories about disorders and generalizes them to apply to everyone. It does not take into account the view that humans are unique. An example of this is that the general adaptation syndrome assumes that everyone responds in the same way to stress, but does not take into account that some people have more support than others. Reductionism is a part of understanding how a system works, but the problem is that in the process, we may lose a real understanding of the thing we are investigating. For example, the biological approach suggests that an illness such as schizophrenia is basically a complex physical, chemical system that has gone wrong. Mental illness has multiple causes, yet the biological approach focuses on just biology, the nature side, tending to ignore life experiences and psychological factors, the nurture, such as how people think and feel. For example, one theory is that schizophrenia is genetic. However, twin studies show that it is not completely genetic and the environment has a part to play.